Imagine two people, same age, same income, same amount of money invested. 5 years later, one of them has nearly doubled their money. The other has barely broken even, and they have no idea why. They made the same trades, they picked the same stocks, they even watched the same YouTube videos about investing. So what went wrong? It wasn't bad luck, it wasn't timing, and it definitely wasn't something obvious like picking the wrong company. It was something almost no beginner ever thinks about, something that quietly, invisibly eats away at your returns every single year without ever sending you a bill, without ever showing up as a loss in your portfolio. And today, we're going to talk about exactly what that is. Here's what most people think investing looks like. You find a good stock or fund, you put your money in, the market goes up, you make money. Simple, right? And in some ways, yes, that's the basic idea. But there's a version of this story that beginners almost always miss, and it starts with a number that looks completely harmless. Let's say you invest in a fund that charges a fee of 1% per year. 1%. That sounds like nothing. You'd barely notice it. If someone offered to manage your money for just $1 out of every 100, most people would think that's a great deal. But here's the thing nobody tells you. That 1% isn't taken out of what you put in. It's taken out of your entire portfolio every single year. And over time, because of something called compounding, that tiny little number does something that will genuinely shock you. This fee is called an expense ratio, and it's the hidden risk that most beginner investors never see coming. Let's make this real with a simple example. Imagine you invest $10,000 today, and you leave it alone for 30 years. The market gives you an average return of 8% per year. That's a reasonable long-term number to work with. If you're in a low-cost fund that charges just 0.1% in fees, which is very common with simple index funds, after 30 years, you'd have roughly $99,000. You turned $10,000 into nearly $100,000. That's the power of compounding. That's why people say time in the market is so valuable. Now let's change just one thing. Same money, same 8% return, same 30 years, but this time you're in a fund that charges 1% per year. You'd end up with around $76,000. That's $23,000 less for changing absolutely nothing about your behavior or your investment choices, just the fee. And now let's say you went with a fund charging 2%, which isn't unusual in certain actively managed funds or some retirement accounts. You'd end up with about $57,000. That's $42,000 less than the low-cost option. Gone, silently, without a single dramatic moment where you noticed anything was wrong. That's the trap. Fees don't feel like losses because you never actually see the money leave. You never get a notification that says, hey, we just took $800 from your account this year. It just shows up as slightly slower growth, slightly lower numbers. And after 30 years, you're looking at a completely different life outcome, and you don't even know why. Now here's where it gets interesting, because this isn't just a math problem, it's a psychology problem. There's a concept in behavioral economics called the pain of paying. Research shows that humans feel financial pain most intensely when a transaction is visible and immediate. When you hand over cash, you feel it. When you see it charge on your bank statement, you notice it. Your brain registers it as a real loss. But when money disappears slowly, invisibly over decades, your brain never triggers that alarm. Fees are designed, whether intentionally or not, to exploit this blind spot perfectly. Think about it this way. If someone walked up to you and said, "Give me $42,000 right now," you would absolutely say no. You'd feel the pain of that loss immediately. Your brain would scream at you. But if that same person said, "I'll just take 2% of your money per year while I manage it for you," your brain hears 2% and thinks, that's barely anything. It cannot naturally calculate what 2% compounded over 30 years actually means in real dollars. We're just not wired for that kind of math. This is why so many smart, well-intentioned people end up paying enormous fees without ever realizing what they've given up. There's another layer to this too. It's something called the expertise illusion. When a fund charges a higher fee, part of our brain assumes it must be better. Higher price equals higher quality, right? That's how most things in life work. You pay more for the premium version, you expect better results. But with investing, the data tells a completely different story. Study after study including decades of research from major financial institutions, has shown that the majority of actively managed funds, the ones with the higher fees and the teams of professional analysts and the fancy strategies, do not consistently outperform simple, low-cost index funds over the long run. You are often paying more to get less, and the painful irony is that the higher the fee, the harder the fund has to work just to break even with a cheap alternative. If a low-cost fund earns 8% and keeps almost all of it, and an expensive fund earns 8% but gives up 2% in fees, the expensive one needs to outperform by at least 2% just to match results. And over long periods of time, very few managers can consistently do that. So here's the deeper idea, the real insight. Wealth building is not just about picking the right investments. It's about keeping as much of your returns as possible. Think of your investment returns like a river flowing into a reservoir. Your job is to make sure as much water actually reaches that reservoir. Fees are like leaks in the pipe. A small leak doesn't seem like a crisis, but over 30 years, a small constant leak can drain away a third of everything you were supposed to collect. And here's what makes this especially powerful when you flip it around. If fees are silent drain, then low fees are a silent superpower. Every dollar you save in fees stays in your portfolio. It compounds, it grows, it earns returns on itself. A small difference in fees today becomes a massive difference in wealth decades from now. This is actually one of the most reliable edges available to any investor. You cannot control what the market does tomorrow. You cannot guarantee a stock will go up. You cannot predict economic cycles, but you can absolutely control what fees you pay. That is entirely within your power, starting today. So what do you actually do with this? First, find out what you're paying right now. If you have any investment accounts, a retirement account, a brokerage account, anything, look for the expense ratio of every fund you're in. It's usually buried in the fine print, but it's there. Most brokerages will show it in the fund details section. Just search the fund name followed by expense ratio and you'll find it. Second, compare what you're paying to the alternatives. Low-cost index funds, the ones that simply track the overall market rather than trying to beat it, often charge somewhere between 0.03% and 0.2% per year. If you're currently paying 0.8%, 1% or more, that gap is worth paying very close attention to. Third, understand the trade-off you're actually making. Sometimes there are reasons to pay slightly higher fees. Certain types of accounts, specific investment strategies, funds that offer genuine diversification you can't easily get elsewhere. That's fine. The goal isn't to pay zero fees no matter what. The goal is to make a conscious, informed choice, not to accidentally give away decades of compounding without ever realizing it. And fourth, build this awareness into every investment decision going forward. Before you put money anywhere, ask yourself, what is this actually costing me? Not just the sticker price, but the long-term compounding cost. Run the numbers. Even a rough estimate will change how you see things, because once you've seen what 1% versus 0.1% looks like over 30 years, you can never unsee it. Here's the thought I want to leave you with. Most people spend enormous amounts of energy trying to find the perfect stock, the perfect time to invest, the perfect strategy to beat the market. And those things feel exciting. They feel like where the real money gets made. But some of the most powerful wealth-building decisions are the boring ones, the quiet ones, the ones that don't make headlines and don't come with a thrilling story. Choosing a fund that charges 0.05% instead of 1% doesn't feel like a major financial move, but over the course of a lifetime, it might be worth more than almost any stock pick you ever make. The hidden risk isn't out there in the volatile, unpredictable market. It's sitting quietly inside your own portfolio, dressed up in a number small enough that your brain never raises the alarm. Now you know it's there, and knowing is the first step to making sure it doesn't cost you everything it otherwise would have.